and they are afraid that that it could be dangerous when they send it.
Oh my gosh.
And I'm like, what? It's a PSU. Please look it up. Look up the definition of a PSU. It doesn't have a battery. It's electronical components. It's not dangerous. Yes. I'm like, oh my God. And I said to them today, I have a second one coming. Please don't put that in the review because I'm supposed to fix computers. I am disabled. My computer is down. The other computer that I need to fix is down too. It also belongs to a physically disabled person. So please do me a favor.
Welcome once again to my channel and my latest video. In this one, it's going to be a collaboration video. I have two individuals who have agreed to come on and talk about technology in general and about YouTube and about building computers and whatever else we want to discuss along the way here. I have just a couple of things in mind, but there's no scripted discussion here. It's all in the open. So once again, I am David Rivera. And I am the owner of the PE for Doers YouTube channel. And we have with us Jeremy, right? You want to introduce yourself, Jeremy?
Hi, I'm Jeremy. I'm the owner of the Practical IT with Jeremy Leik channel. And we cover a lot of Linux, Unix, and Mac OS items on that channel.
And then finally, Kathrin.
Hello, my name is Kathrin Hausermann. I also have a YouTube channel, but I don't stream too often on it. And when I stream, I mostly stream my game planning. So far, I have not really started yet, but and in earnest with my YouTube channel. What I do parts lists for people who have trouble with making themselves a good PC part list. So I do the part list for them. I talk to them. Often it's like an hour or 1.5 or even more, depending on the project they have in mind. And upon the information I gather, I make them a parts list within their what they can afford within their budget and for their project. So sometimes it can not only take hours, but days to find the right parts for the project, depending on the difficulty of it. Yeah, but this is something I really love doing.
Yeah, and you do it extremely well. I mean, I ran into Kathrin on the channel we mentioned, I think in our last video, Jeremy, Kathrin Hausermann, the one with the Lazy Susan on his kitchen countertop.
Yeah.
Because Kathrin was one of the administrators that's on that channel.
Sure.
Highly trusted by Carrie. I mean, I think she probably still is. You still, I assume you still participate in that channel, right, Carrie?
Yes, I do.
I have not been on there in a while. I had a little bit of a difference of opinion with Carrie. And, I decided to not participate anymore, but I still learned a lot from the gentleman. I learned a lot of things about building a new modern computer. I had built computers, as I said in previous videos, that, but that was more than 25 years ago. And they changed quite a bit in terms of how you build it. They actually got simpler now in a lot of ways in terms of the hardware, but more complicated, I think, in terms of the software than we had back then. There's a lot more choices, a lot more versions of everything you have to deal with. And I think I've said that before. But she also helped me with my new server. She's the one that found XigmaNAS for me. That's running on my server back there because I had put out the requirements that I wanted it to not only be a NAS, but also to be my security server as well, basically running the equivalent of a Windows server, so that I can use the Windows authentication engine that's built into Windows Server, and that's what we have when we start using. I'm trying to think of the name right now, Jeremy. You could help me. The name of the software in Unix. For some reason, I'm drawing a blank right now. Samba.
Yep.
Samba, yes.
SambaAD in particular, because that's for Active Directory, which is the name of the Microsoft software. And so that was a big deal. And I think I said before, I had a lot of trouble with that initially because there was a bad version of the XigmaNAS that was released around the time when I tried to use it. If I had done it like 6 months earlier, it would have been fine. And then 6 months later, it was fine again. But they had released a bad version, an early version of 12. And I guess they just left out a couple of critical modules and it just wouldn't work. It drove me crazy. But you finally got it working and it works fine.
Yes,
That was where, she helped me with a lot.
I still feel bad that I pointed you to the wrong version until this day. David, I'm so sorry.
No, it's not your fault. It was, the volunteers, I can't complain. They did a good job in supporting me. But they basically put up their hands and said, we have to wait till the next version by the volunteer developers, when they put one out. And that took a while because they had to iron out a lot of, what happened was the new version of FreeBSD, version 12, actually caused them to have to rewrite a lot of their scripts because the whole interface is, a nice GUI interface to configure it, right? As you have probably, because I think that's how I found you too, Jeremy. I was doing searches for XigmaNAS.
Yeah, I think that's what you told me before.
Yes, and you were you had done a review, or I'm not sure exactly when that review took place, but I did watch it. I watched like several different reviews. I was trying to find somebody to help me with this, and in the end, the only people that could help me were the actual developers of XigmaNAS. And when they released the new 12.0.4, then it worked fine. It worked right out of the box. And I had posted so many messages, and I think one of their developers, he felt guilty because he started directing answers directly to me through the forum. And he helped me the most. He actually gave me a step-by-step that I had to follow, because when he did get the new version working, you would configure it differently than the documentation that they had published. So first it was the software was bad, and then their documentation for installing Samba Active Directory was bad because they wound up having to do a lot of changing to the screens, the GUI. And some of that broke things, unfortunately. Anyway, long story, I'm going off on a tangent again. Sorry about that.
That happens every time with Windows too, yes?
Yeah, I guess so. I mean, but you just take it with them. You don't get any help necessarily.
No, you don't. You just left.
You suffer. I think in our first video that we did that went up on Jeremy's channel, I talked about my little episode with Microsoft when I was a consultant. I still remember that. I still remember being in Redmond, Washington, and those 3 buildings that were formed, and they made it look like an arrowhead almost. I don't know if they still have it there like that, and they were on stilts. I still remember that. And you could drive a truck underneath those stilts because that was where the parking was, because it rained so much in Seattle, right? Mm-hmm. So that was their way of staying out of the rain when they were coming to work. They would drive, into the driveway, which there was no gate at the time. There was nobody stopping you. You drive underneath the building. And then they had card key access to get into the stilts. I don't remember if all the stilts had it or not, but there were selected stilts, I believe, that had an actual entrance door to it. And it didn't look like it was totally in the script. And we were standing there, me and my boss and 2 other people that were part of the security practice, and we couldn't figure out we couldn't find any way to get into the building. Eventually, we were able to figure it out when we tried to tailgate somebody into the stilt. And he stopped us cold. Now, maybe if we had wore cutoff jeans and T-shirts like he had, we probably would have been able to get in. But because we had suits on, he probably thought we were feds. I think I said that last time. But it was an interesting experience. And the whole week that we were there, I learned so much about Microsoft and how much of a left hand not talking to the right hand was happening between then Windows NT, which is a predecessor for Windows 2000 and the predecessor for the later versions of Windows, right? They wouldn't talk to the regular Windows people. So you had the NT people and you had the Windows people, and they kept them in separate buildings. We only saw the NT one because the product that we were there to write a white paper on was a product that only ran under NT, Windows NT.
Oh, I see.
So we never got to see the other buildings, and it was recommended to us not to go to the other buildings for different reasons. Because if they were seen in if an NT person was seen in the Windows building, there would be a problem. Somebody would complain. And the middle building, you don't want to go into any because you could run into Bill Gates, and he had a history. I don't know if I said this on your channel or not, Jeremy, but he had a history of when he met somebody, if he didn't like the first impression, they were not there the next day. And they lost some really good engineers, software engineers, because of that.
I believe it. Thankfully, the guy's mellowed as he's got older and started giving his money away.
I don't know. Does that include the employees? Good treatment of the employees? I'd have to see it to believe it,
He's no longer involved in the day-to-day operations of Microsoft.
Yeah, I haven't been following you.
Hasn't been for a while.
So anyway, you had a couple of things that you wanted to talk about, Jeremy. Did you want to pick one of them and get started with this?
So one thing that I've noticed, and sort of to piggyback on what you were saying earlier about when you do a review, you own it. I've had a similar situation. I'll review a software product, and people seem to think that I'm somehow the developer or the free tech support person for that software. And I'll try to answer a couple questions, but there's a point at which I have to just draw a line in the sand and say, well, here's their forums. You're going to be better off talking to the developers because it's a lot of extra work to do tech support, and to do it for free is not something that I really want to be doing.
And you're not going to get a lot of thanks for it. You get criticism, unfortunately.
No.
That's one of the things you have to worry about.
But the topic that I had sent in the email is, it's interesting. I do a lot of software reviews, and I did a review, I think it was late last year, of a product called NX Filter. Okay. And basically what it does is you can use it in like a school or a library or something to filter content on public computers. Okay. So people aren't going to porn sites or gambling sites or what have you. And, I was getting several messages in the comment section from this particular person. I had done the review on Ubuntu 18.04 LTS, and he wanted to know if it worked on the current LTS version, the 20.04 version. And I said, well, there's no reason it shouldn't. And because it's a Java-based software, and as long as you've got a Java runtime installed, then you should be good to go. And so he kept coming back with, little pieces, and I'm trying to put this puzzle together. So finally, I just went ahead and I spun up a virtual machine and ran through the install and took some notes. And I finally said, yes, it does run. You've got to make some changes because like you described with Samba and XigmaNAS, the documentation on their website still shows the previous version of Ubuntu. And so with the new version, the big thing I found is that there's a newer version of Java. And other than that, everything else just runs exactly like the instructions say. But it's interesting to me that people don't they don't go back to that. What, at least when I went through school, it was 7th grade science. You learned the scientific method, and just being methodical and going through things. And it's like, okay, well, every time there's a new Ubuntu release, there's a number of packages that changes. And so that's one of the first things on my list. Is there a newer version of package X that I need to install instead of what's laid out in the existing tutorial? And if I just approach it that way, it generally works out in my favor, and things seem to just run with sometimes a little tinkering, but generally, in this case, for instance, I made it run on the first attempt. So it's just a phenomenon I've noticed that, and maybe it's people that are younger and didn't have the, regimented sort of background and, sort of lower level introduction to computers.
Oh, by the way, I don't want to lose any of those viewers.
Right. but it's just interesting and trying to come up with an approach that gets them to the level where they're comfortable installing it. And, maybe next time they will say, okay, well, all I need to do is check these 3 things and I should be able to make this run. Something I've been noticing, and it's happened more than once, which is why I suggested the topic.
Okay, well, I totally agree with you. You mentioned the 7th grade and the scientific method. There's a story that came out of that just popped into my head. In 7th grade, it was interesting. Basically, I was, I want to get careful how I phrase this. I was quite a bit ahead of most students when it came to math and science. I was behind when it came to social studies and English and things like that. But when it came to math and science, it was no issue. And I still remember the 7th grade, talk about that was because that was a scientific method, as I recall, too. And I still remember people, complaining that they had to study something like that they didn't see how they would ever use it.
Right.
But the other thing was just a general intellectual curiosity, partially, and also the desire to learn something that has meaning to it. Everybody knew that I was like one of the top, if not the top math student in the class. Well, one day, this group of guys, I'm not sure if any of the girls were involved with that or not. Sometimes they were and you just didn't see them because they were in the shadows more at that point. But they somehow stole the math test that was coming up. I had heard a rumor that they had stolen it. I'm not a squealer. I'm not going to go and talk to the teacher or anything else. And somebody even asked me, first off, they approached me, one of the guys that I normally don't socialize with. He approaches me, he says, hey, listen, would you rat somebody out to the teacher if you found out, that they got a hold of the test? I said, absolutely not. I'm not crazy. I'm not here to cause problems. I'm not that type of person. So he goes, oh, good. Listen, me and a few of the, excuse me?
Oh, it's funny.
He goes, me and a few of the other guys, we stole a test for the upcoming test, right? And it was done because she had left the mimeograph thing in her trash box. And one of the guys worked cleaning up the mimeograph room and found it in there. So I said, oh, well, okay. And they go, we'd like you to do the test for us. So they wanted me to go through the test and come up with the right answers for them. And I remember the look I must have gave. I was completely shocked. And I had to think about it for a second. I said, if you have the questions, it doesn't take that much effort to figure out the answers. Well, we might make a mistake. And they said, would you help us? And I said, I'm sorry, but I will not be participating in that. But you could get 100 on the test if you see the questions, right? I said, well, I hate to say this, but I plan on getting 100 anyway. I did not make friends in that discussion. Let's put it that way. I still remember the guy was giving me dirty looks for the whole rest of the year. And some of the other ones that found out that I refused, they were doing the same thing. But I think about some of the people I work with today. I work for a state agency. I think they would do it. I think that some of the engineers, they're so passive and they're so concerned about having more friends with people that they don't normally socialize with. I'm absolutely positive they would do it. I guess I never had that need, to have a lot of friends. I usually had one good friend, and that was all I needed. And that's the way I carried myself through most of my life. Even today, my best friend is one good friend that I've had, the same guy since 10th grade, a long time ago. I didn't actually even date girls until I was like 21. And it wasn't because, you know, it was forbidden. It was not allowed. I mean, my parents would have been perfectly happy with that. But I was debilitatingly shy when it came to that. I could deal with a guy on any level. But when it came to a girl, especially if there was one that, you know, I might have found was attractive in some way, I would fold. I would back off and I'd go into total shyness. I couldn't even talk.
Oh yeah,
You know, it reminds me of that guy Raj on The Big Bang Theory. I'm not kidding.
I was just thinking that.
It reminds me of that. And I think back to, I saw this show and I was like, oh my gosh. Anyway, enough about me.
My younger sister, she lives in Switzerland with her husband. So
Switzerland.
And I live in Colombia. So
that's one country I always wanted to go to was Switzerland.
Yeah, they if you ever go to Switzerland, you have to make sure that I'm in Switzerland too. Then I can show you around Switzerland.
Okay.
Like a free tourist guide, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, I got to get my wife to leave the country though. She's not too fond of the idea of leaving the United States. So.
Because of flying?
No, I think it's mostly because of the crime and the terrorist activities and things like that. So she trusts the United States, and I don't blame her. I mean, I do too. I trust it more. But I've been all over the world, except for Latin America. I have not been to any of the Latin American countries, and that includes Mexico. Here
in Colombia, where I live, it is safe too. I mean, citizens from another country, they should not go further down south. As tourists, go to Cali and then stop. Don't go down further south. Because if you do, you basically asking to be abducted.
Yeah, that's a fear in Latin America with Mexico. We've heard, there's movies made about that, right? So that's a fear that she would definitely have. And I have it too. I have it too, because we're down there and you can't protect yourself, right?
No, Cali, as tourists, you go to Cali and no further down. Buenaventura, Malaga is off limits.
Wow.
It's dangerous enough for people that are, even if they're in the military, it's dangerous enough for them,
Right.
If you stay very safe, then it's a very nice country.
Colombia is the only country I ever refused to go to on a business trip. And that was many years ago. It was like when I was doing software support for a small company. And I would travel around. I did some international traveling, not as much as I did when later jobs, but we had partnerships in a lot of different countries, and South America was a big set of partnerships. But they wanted me to go down to Colombia when there was a problem with some of the software that couldn't be resolved remotely. And the local people that were there, even though they had come to because I was at the headquarters of that small company, which was on Long Island. And I was one of the instructors too. Whenever I wasn't doing software support, I was teaching courses, including to partners. I have stories with that one, boy. Teaching software to different people from different countries. It's unbelievable. The problem, they wanted me to go down to Colombia, and I think it was only 2 weeks after they had killed a Bible salesman, an American Bible salesman, because they suspected that he was an employee of the CIA. And they wanted me to go down there. Now, keep this in mind. I have a Spanish last name, but I can't speak Spanish. I know a few words. I can understand a lot more, like, 80 to 85% of it. And when I was a kid, I understand a lot more than that because I was exposed to it more then. But speaking it, no way. I'd be a target. I mean, a guy, what's with this last name and you can't speak Spanish? You're definitely CIA, boom, That's the way. So I actually refused to go there. That's the only trip I ever refused.
I completely understand. I mean, me in your position, I probably would have done the same. Yes, because
my bosses didn't like it at that company, but I didn't care. I didn't want to. There was no point. I was a newlywed at the time too, I think.
Oh,
but I've been to a lot of other countries. You named a region of the world, and certain countries I like a lot better than others. One that I wanted to go to, as I said, is Switzerland. I've never been to Italy, which is where my wife's ancestry comes from too. That's someplace prior to COVID, of course, that would be worth going to, right?
Yeah, I mean, if you ever make it to Switzerland, Italy is not far. You take the train depending on where you go in Italy, northern Italy.
Right.
You take the fast train, you're there in 3 hours.
Yeah. Yeah.
2.5, 3 hours.
When it comes to Europe, I've been to UK more times than I could remember, at least 10 times to the UK. And not just London, also up in Manchester as well. I did some work. But I've been to Belgium a lot. I think maybe 4 or 5 times to Belgium. Germany twice. My only exposure to France was my car broke down there. I happened to have a free half a day when I was on a trip to Belgium, and it's not that far away to go to Paris. I had never seen Paris. I had my own rental car. Why not?
Mm-hmm.
Free half a day. I could drive down there, see the sights, come back. I drove down. I got there without any problem. And then I drove around. I didn't want to get out of the car because I couldn't find any parking anywhere. I didn't understand where you could legally park. So I just drove around with the window open and looked at the sights. I should have brought a camera, but I didn't. I was a little surprised how dirty the city was. It reminded me of Brooklyn when I was growing up. And, just a lot of trash in the streets and stuff. I was no graffiti or anything, but just trash in the streets. I was surprised by that. Anyway, I had enough. I saw enough. And I started heading back north to Belgium, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I look at my gas gauge and I'm kind of low on gas. So I pull into a gas station and I didn't speak French, even though my mother when she was alive, she spoke fluent French because she was from Cajun country in Louisiana. I didn't speak French.
Mm-hmm.
She tried to teach me when I was a kid. I barely passed English in school. You're not going to teach me French. But
yeah, I have the same problem. I cannot speak French. I cannot also not understand it, but I should be able to because I'm from Switzerland. And
right.
And I had German in school, but most of Switzerland, they have to learn French and another language or Italian. It's depending where you live. Yes, so you should learn at least 2 languages. Yes.
Right.
And my mom, she realized because of my disability, of my cerebral palsy, I really have problems with languages that have that do not have word like French or Portuguese. It's just you without comma, without a full stop, nothing. Yes, these languages, they're just not for me. And my mother realized that, and she said, well, I cannot let you walk around just on this earth without another language. You need another language. So what do you think? Do you want to learn English? Because you cannot just go around and talk only Swiss German and German. It's not good. And I said, okay, yes, I learn English. And then I learned English, and I have the highest certificate in English before you go into the teacher certification. Yes. Right. So I have a certificate of proficiency in English, which is the highest one, and it's at the same level as native speaking person in English. But sometimes I think I speak a little bit better English than people who live in the English-speaking country themselves. I don't mean you or Jeremy. You're fully capable of speaking wonderful English, yes.
Yeah.
If I sometime read other comments or something, I was like, oh my God, what is this English? This is not...
You speak better English than a guy I work with, and he's been in the United States now 11 years. He's a citizen, and he's from Portugal. And I tell he's one of the junior people in my group, so I'm sort of like an unofficial mentor to him. And I tell him all the time, I mean, you've got to improve the English because sometimes, one time he said something to me, it was just me and him on the phone, fortunately, but the way he pronounced the words, it sounded like something really bad. And I said, please do not say that to anybody again. Do not say it that way, because he couldn't say one word at all. And it came across as like a bad phrase. And I said, don't even try to say that word anymore.
Just forget it. Yeah.
Just forget it. Gone. But he's one of those, we have a lot of people, and I don't know how it is in some of the other countries necessarily, because I've never lived there long term. I've only been there on short visits. I've never been in any one country more than a week. And so I'm not sure how they really have lived and grown. Although I learned a lot about Germany from a guy from Germany who I wound up stuck in an apartment with during, this is back in, the 70s. I was sent to training up in Boston, and it was the year that they had the worst snowstorm in history, and the state was shut down for a whole week. I was there for a 2-week class, and they gave us efficiency apartments, which had 2 bedrooms and a shared kitchen and a shared living room. It was nice. Well, on one of those training, I was on that one of those training groups, and anything more than a week, they put you in this apartment. And this guy was from Germany, and so me and him were stuck in the apartment. We had to walk like a mile to the grocery store to buy food because, you know, there's no restaurant near the apartments. You know, we had to go buy our own food and cook it. And I still remember one day we were sitting there like 2 or 3 days into it, and I'm telling you, the snow was literally 10, 12 feet high outside of our streets in that hotel in the suburbs of Boston. It was totally I've never seen anything like that. And it's still the history. That one broke the records in the history books for that area of the country. But he sat there and we were watching TV, and he says, David, you know, he spoke English fairly well. I need to ask you something. I've been hesitant to ask you this. I said, what's that? He goes, obviously, I don't know the United States that well. But, you know, I never would have imagined that you people have to live in conditions with this much snow. He just didn't connect to the fact that this had never happened before. I said, this has never happened before. And definitely not in New York. New York, it doesn't get that bad. The most I ever saw in New York when I was up to that point was maybe 4 feet. You didn't see 12 feet of snow. I don't know what you get, Jeremy, in your area, but that's still... 12 feet was a lot. At one point, there was a car because the snowplows kept trimming more and more off the roads. Initially, they're like 1 lane. And then as they kept going through more and more, they went like 1.5 lanes, then 2 lanes. And it was a 4-lane road next to the hotel. And then one day, they finally had trimmed it enough to where, and it was in the newspaper, right outside our hotel, there was this little sports car. And it must have gotten buried in the snow. And every time the plows pushed the snow, it pushed this car up. The car was 10 feet off the ground when the snowplow had trimmed enough to where you could see the side of the car. And we were like, oh my gosh, how did they get that car down from there? And it wasn't a heavy car. I guess three strong guys could get it out of there, but still, it was like 10 feet off the ground. They had to probably use a crane with straps and stuff to get that out of there. We didn't see how they did it, but you know, around the same time we were leaving, another week later, because our training, we had to go into overtime for our training class the second week. I was there for a 2-week training class. The first week we completely lost. Yeah. And then the second week they made us do 14 hours a day, and including 4 hours on Saturday in order to make up for the time. They paid us overtime though. You know, that was good. At the time I was getting paid overtime. So, you know, I didn't complain. That was long days of classes. That's one class I'm not sure if I remember too much about it, because it was just, once you get past a certain number of hours in a classroom, you sort of lose it. That's my experience.
Yes, it's true.
What about you, Jeremy? Did you have anything like that ever happen?
No, not really. And the only really bad snowstorm I remember in Michigan was, well, and I was pretty young, was the blizzard of 78.
That's the same one.
We had a snowdrift as tall as our house.
Wow.
Of course, you know, behind the house I grew up in, it was all farmers' fields, and so the wind just came whipping across there, and the snowdrift on the south side of the house was 2 stories tall.
Wow.
So it was quite memorable. And then
that was February. It's the same snowstorm I'm talking about.
Yeah.
It's the same one. Yeah.
I think I was 4 at the time. So
I was a little older.
But yeah, and then you know, it's interesting. You know, I remember as a kid, we always had enough snow every winter. You know, we could go cross country skiing at the local parks and everything. And you know, there hasn't been that much snow in a bunch of years where it's even worth getting out and going to the parks to ski, because there's, you know, not enough coverage on the ground unless you go, you know, 2 hours north, and then you know, of course, there's ski resort places up there too,
right?
Northern Michigan. But yeah, it's been a lot of years since I've been on cross country skis.
I never tried cross country. I just did regular slope skiing when I was younger. I wouldn't try that now. I'd break a bone too easily.
I did that once when I was in high school, and it was my first time on skis, and it was the bunny hill, and I took somebody out on the way down.
Oh no, the bunny hill?
Yep. So yeah, that was my first and last time doing downhill skiing.
Oh, I could tell stories which I won't go into here. When I was part of the ski club, and then I even went on a ski trip with my younger sister because she was 3 years younger than me. When her high school went on a trip, they allowed you to bring guests, and she brought me. So I was really into it the last 3 years of high school.
Nice.
Just like I was into playing chess too. Me and the guys that I hung out with in high school, we were all destined for engineering school, electrical engineering. Which, by the way, I wanted to show you this cup. This I got from my daughter when I first got my PE license. I don't know if you can read that.
No, I can't.
It's pretty small.
Yeah, it is kind of small. Engineering. It says, engineering, I try to make things idiot-proof, but they keep making, what is it? They keep making better idiots.
Better idiots. Okay. I've seen something similar before.
My oldest daughter bought me that when I got my PE license.
That's funny.
So that's one of my favorite coffee cups.
Yeah, I believe that. It's brilliant. It's true.
I hope I didn't insult anybody out there. You know, I know I won't edit this out. It's too much to edit out. But so, is there anything else, Jeremy, that you wanted to cover, or is there anything you wanted to talk about, Kathrin, that related to just general technology, computer builds, whatever you?
Yeah, Jeremy said before that people they are afraid if you review something. This is why I say to people also sometimes, look, if you don't know, just try it. Yes?
Mm-hmm.
Just try it out. Yes?
Yep.
Install a VM. Yes, a virtual machine. I can give you the link. Yes, install it, or I install it for you via the TeamViewer. I install you the program, and then you can try it out. And this way, you can find out if you like it, if it's suited for your needs. Yes, if you understand it. Yes, just because sometimes you can. When it comes to software, you cannot always with PC parts list. That is simple because a certain memory has a certain height. Yes, a certain case has a certain width or a certain height or a combination of it. There are documents you can look that up because you can find the page from the manufacturer. And if that is correct, you have a good chance you can look the correct measurements up. Yes, but with software, it's different. Sometimes I have to try something out too. Yes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
For example, at the moment I use my the Raspberry Pi 4 as the backup because my living room computer is broken. Yes, Amazon, I ordered the PSU on the 9th of November. It finally arrived. Now the PSU is in the reviewing process because the shipping company is too stupid to know what a PSU is. Yes, for some reason. It's not even funny. It's sad. Yes,
Absolutely.
and they are afraid that that it could be dangerous when they send it.
Oh my gosh.
And I'm like, what? It's a PSU. Please look it up. Look up the definition of a PSU. It doesn't have a battery. Yes, because when you send things abroad, if it contains a battery, then it turns into a nightmare and a real problem. But it's electronical components, it's not dangerous. Yes. I'm like, oh my God. And I said to them today, I have a second one coming. Please don't put that in the review because I need both. To fix computers, I am disabled. My computer is down. The other computer that I need to fix is down too. It also belongs to physically disabled person. So please do me a favor. And I don't know. I don't know. Oh God. Sometimes.
Oh yeah, I as you saw, I made some videos related to problems I had with certain things. Right? It's unbelievable. I did have a question for both of you. I know I had mentioned this to Jeremy in our last call, but you know, I've been starting to do this 10 gigabit stuff. I bought these two 10 gigabit cards from eBay. There was a pair of them. I got a good price. And right before this call, like within a half an hour of this call, I decided to put them in. And I put one in this computer that I'm using right now. And Windows sees it, doesn't seem to have a problem with that at all. The problem that I have is that I don't know if the drivers are installed. I don't know. It looks like it says the drivers are up. I tried to say get the latest drivers, and it said that it has the latest drivers. But then there's a note there. You click on it, and it says, but the manufacturer's website might have later ones. Well, I guess what I'm wondering about, and I'm going to test this, obviously, I didn't connect it to my 10 gig switch. I need to do that probably tomorrow.
Yes.
And I don't know if this card will connect unless it's to a 10 gig switch only, because that card is not advertised as one that supports, you know, one gig, 2.5, 5 gig, and 10 gig, or it doesn't say anything other than 10 gig.
Right.
So I'm thinking that maybe it has to be connected to a 10 gig switch. That's my guess at this point, but I won't know that until I try it tomorrow when I turn this switch on and test it.
Sometimes you also need a special cable.
I have the right cable. I have the right, this particular one is RJ45, and I have Cat 7 cables. Matter of fact, I have it still sitting here on the table here. I have a Cat 7 cable that is supported for that. You see the extra shielding on there if you looked at it carefully. That's a Cat 7. I'm going to make a whole video on all the stuff that I bought to upgrade my network. But included in that are 3 network cards that I bought from eBay. I bought 2 of them in a pair, which are meant for PCs, for the client.
Right.
And I bought a 3rd one meant for my server. It is one that's on a supported list, Broadcom, for FreeBSD. I'm not sure, though, if I have to install a separate driver for that or not. But that's a task I'll be challenged. Maybe I'll get to it this weekend, maybe not. But this is one of those things that you have to try. You reminded me of that, Kathrin, when you said you just have to try these things and see how they work out.
Yes, sometimes you don't get around because Google does not know everything. Yes.
Yeah, and it's hard to tell. Yeah, it is. And I found no videos on that in particular. It seems like everybody who just plugged in a 10 gigabit card, it worked. Nobody talks about a problem where I guess I made the assumption, which may be bad, and I'm hoping that my assumption is bad, that if the card says only 10 gig, maybe it does not run with a 1 gig network. I don't know.
You know what? Send me the brand and the model in an email, and then I try to look it up too.
Okay.
Yes,
Okay.
maybe
Yeah. I actually have it open right now. In terms of it does recognize it in Windows. Let me open this up. So what I'll do is I'll share my screen 1. Do you guys see anything here?
Yeah.
Yep.
Yes.
I mean, here's my properties. It might be a little bit small print because I have a 4K monitor, so I apologize for that.
No, it's fine. I can make it smaller or bigger.
Yeah, QLogic BCM 57710, 10 gigabit Ethernet.
Yeah, it doesn't have the yellow exclamation point next to it.
No, it looks like it's installed fine.
Should be
Yeah.
fine.
And if I click on it and I look at the drivers, it says it's functioning properly. I tried to tell it to update the newer drivers, and it says it has the latest ones. So I'm hoping that the only problem I have, and I've never heard of that, I guess I made the assumption that if it supported 10 gig, it would also run under 1 gig, but maybe that was a bad assumption. So anyway, both of you probably have played with this more than I have, so I just thought I'd bring it up as long as I was on here.
No, I'm concerning internet. Colombia is still in the, how do you say, dark ages.
Oh, yeah?
Internet speed is not the forte of Colombia. Yes. Yeah. I can actually be glad that I can stream.
Well, I did want to show you guys this. I wanted to show you my plans for my new network. Let me share the screen again. So this is, can you see this diagram I have up here?
Yep.
Oh, yes, yes, yes.
This is my plan for my new rack that's going to go in my network corner.
Oh, yes, you showed me the corner that
Yeah, that it'll go in. This is the actual layout of all of the stuff and how it's going to be laid out in this corner.
10 gig port, yes, the 8. Oh, that's your switch that you talk about, yes, cable management.
Yeah. There's my 2 existing Buffalo servers that I'm turning into backup. That's my modem to the internet.
Yeah.
I'm going to put in my my backup domain controller here using my Raspberry Pi that I have. And then this is the way it's going to lay out. You see my existing server down here, the one that's running XigmaNAS and also Active Directory. And these are my temperature controllers. These are the ones that control the fans. I already have that in place, but I'm going to add a second fan to each one of these. So one of these controllers will control the left side fans, and the other controller will control the right side fans. And these are pretty powerful, pretty cheap too. You put in the maximum temperature you want and the minimum temperature you want, and it'll keep it'll turn the fans on and off depending on where the temperature actually falls. Europeans would like this because it's all in centigrade.
Yes, that's why. Yes, I don't like Fahrenheit. It doesn't.
Yeah, that's how I grew up with. I'm sure that I don't know if that's the case for you too, Jeremy, but I bet it is.
Yeah,
it's confusing.
Yeah, I'm used to Fahrenheit. That's all we grew up with. But in here, you see, I have my power strip. I'm going to there's a rack-mounted power strip. I'm going to turn it around so you don't see the plugs. They're going to go into the rack. And then I got my 10 gig switch that this is new. That's what's sitting in this box here. And then I'm going to put a cable management shield. Kind of hard to draw that, so I just labeled it that. But it's a way of tucking the cables down into the rack, the ones that are jumping from here to the distribution panel. And I put a second one here for this. This is my main switch that's running right now. That's my 24-port TP-Link 1 gig switch. And I'm going to run a special cable right from the SFP slot here on the 10 gig port to the 1 gig one. I'm just going to run that direct copper cable that they have that plugs into SF. And I actually bought 2 of those at different lengths. I think I'm going to go with the shorter one, but I wanted to have a second one anyway for troubleshooting purposes,
Yeah, it's always good to have a second one in case you need to test.
It's an oddball cable, I don't have anything else like that.
No, this is the cable that I meant because I knew there is another cable for the 10 gig, but I couldn't name it.
Right. Well, the 10 gig, though, the rest of these ports, one is a shared port. Port 8, it's only an 8-port switch, this one here.
Yes.
The port 8 shares with the SFP plus port. So only one of them can be plugged in.
Right.
But I like this one. Let me see if I can blow it up a little bit here. I like that switch. And the reason I picked it, even though it's not managed, because it actually identifies what type of connection you have connected to it. If the 2 lights on the port are both green, it's 10 gig. If the left-right is green and the other one is off, then it's only a 5 gig connection. If the left one is off and the right one is on, then it's only a 2.5 gig. And I have a computer that's 2.5 gig. And I bought a network adapter of 2.5 gig for my wife's computer. So that's going to be running 2.5 gig as well. And then if they're both yellow, it's only a 1 gig or 100 meg.
Yeah, that's a good system too.
That way I can troubleshoot it easier, But this is not a managed one. I would have had to pay an extra $200 to get a managed version of this. So I chose, it wasn't worth it to me to do that,
Yeah, see, I'm not even sure. I read it. When I read the description of the switches and stuff like that, I read managed and not managed, and I was like, oh.
Well, this one is managed. This one here, this TP-Link one is managed. And I replaced the one I had before, which was an unmanaged one, which I may do here too, but that'll be an upgrade in the future. Because it's nice to have a managed switch, because then you can set up segments, they call them VLANs, within your port. You can say that these 4 ports, for example, are a separate network from these other 4 ports.
Oh, I
and
see.
You can give them different, can give them different net mask, and you can give them different configurations, and they're isolated by the switch. It's a nice feature. I don't use that feature right now, but I may.
Yes. That's the difference.
And you have you have a web interface to it. So I can actually log into that switch and I can see how to configure each port, because I can put like a maximum throughput coming in on a particular port. You have a lot of control with a managed switch. Right now, they're all equivalent. I didn't turn on any of those extra features, but if I did, I could actually set it up that one port is more priority than another port, which I may do now. I may make the port that's over here, because this actually has 28 ports. It has 24 ports that are regular RJ45, and then it has 4 of these SFP plus.
The SF plus,
4.
yeah.
So that's considered 4 more ports on this one. It's not shared like the 10 gig one. Those are unique ports. So I may prioritize the one that's connected to the 10 gig.
Exactly.
So that becomes a priority port.
Yes, you can do that. Yeah.
And it makes sense. And that's where having a managed switch will help.
Absolutely. I live in the dark age. I have don't laugh. My router is a Technicolor cable router.
I don't have a lot of growth capability with this rack, but I don't plan on changing this for like 5 years. The only change I would make is if I decided to upgrade to 10 gig. I may convert more of these ports to 10 gig.